My name is Sabelo Pila Santikwala. I'm an HR consultant at HR Talk, and as I've already established that today we're going to be going through our training, which is recruitment do's and don'ts. I am going to be switching off my camera just to try and preserve the quality of the sound. Just give me 1 second. But yeah, okay. So there are going to be a number of attendees who are going to be joining us as we proceed. I'm just not going to allow that to disturb us, so we can proceed. Okay. So the training for today is what we call recruitment do's and don'ts. Okay. So I usually just try my level best with these trainings to try and make them as interactive as possible. Use as much example as I can because I'm quite aware that everybody within this call is able to read for themselves. So the one thing that I'm not going to do, I'm not going to read each slide, but what I'm going to do is with each slide, I'm going to read maybe a few pointers and basically just make examples to try and paint a bigger picture for everybody else. So I do understand that with all the attendees that we have on the call, we all come from different backgrounds. Some work in maybe construction, maybe some work in the health space. So I was actually, while preparing for this training, I was trying to figure out the best of example to utilize or to use that we can use throughout the entire training to somewhat just try to paint a picture so but everybody could understand. So understand, for instance, if someone, let's say for argument's sake, maybe they work in the construction field, and maybe I use an example of a payroll consultant, and maybe where they are working, they don't even use payroll consultant, and maybe they've outsourced their services. They wouldn't quite understand. So the example that I decided to use today was a receptionist. So I think we all are aware that in many spaces, if you walk into a hotel, you find a receptionist. If you walk into municipality buildings, you'll find a receptionist. So for this training, so that it is covered, everything is explained, and to as best as I can, I just want each and every attendee today to have a reception in mind. Okay. To try and have this is to make this session as interactive as possible. I'm not going to ask anybody to unmute themselves, but just for this exercise, I would like each and every attendee, you're not forced, there's no pressure, but on the chat box, what are skills that you think a receptionist needs to have? I'm going to just allow everybody to write whatever they think a good receptionist, what skills they need to have. This part will be very important as we proceed with the training. Okay, so you're more than welcome to just pop what you think, any skills that a good receptionist should have, and then we'll basically use that as we proceed. So you're more than welcome to write it on the chat box. Okay. So things we're going to be covering in this training is interviews, which are really a huge part within recruitment, pre-employment checks, what can you do and what can you not ask for, the importance of reference checking, retracting offers, can this be done? And lastly, we'll be covering the pitfalls of covering or of recruiting badly. Okay, so I am on full screen. So I made a little mark here. Please do not mind it. So, if you have any questions at any point, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself. If you might be a bit uncomfortable in unmuting yourself, you're more than welcome to pop the question on the chat and we'll basically get into it. Okay, sorry. My colleague Charlene just had to advise that. So if you have a question, if you have a burning question, and basically realize that maybe you might not be able to wait till the end, you can raise your hand up, and my colleague Charlene will be able to assist you to unmute, and then we'll get your question across. Okay. So I appreciate that I can already see some of the skills that each and every person believes that a receptionist should have. We will be covering these as we proceed. Okay. So we starting from knowing what you want. So recruitment is part and parcel of every organization within the world, for that matter, whether the organization is small or big. Recruitment will forever be an ongoing process. Okay, so even if it is caused because maybe the company is growing, so the company is growing and we need more people, recruitment will take place. Some instances, recruitment will come as of maybe someone in the specific position was working there and maybe they got terminated, they moved to another organization and there will be a vacancy. So recruitment is one of the parts and parcels that comes with any organization, of which it is important for any HR personnel, any management, a person in management to understand the process of how is it done correctly. Okay, so the first step, before we even consider thinking of anything else, we need to know exactly what we want. Okay, I promised when I send the slide, there wouldn't be this mark, there won't be this little mark. Okay, so ensure that you have in-depth understanding of the role you're hiring for. Will make the rest of the process will make the rest of the recruitment process easier and faster. Since you'll quickly be able to determine who has the experience required successfully to fulfill this role. Okay, so remember what I said from the beginning of the training, we need to all have a reception in mind. Okay, so we need to know exactly what we want. So we're sitting in an organization and really we're realizing that, listen, we have a need. Maybe we had a reception person and they've left, but we need a reception person. So what do you want? So you're not looking for a person who's going to fill the position of the receptionist. That's not the objective way to look at it. It's you need to understand within the reception area, what do we need? Okay. So already we have a list of things that each and everyone have listed. I am going to be going back to it once we'll progress a bit further with the training. But the moment you understand clearly what you need. So I saw a couple of, so firstly, someone with great communication skills. So the moment you understand what you need, it makes the process quite easy. So even with selecting, the moment you understand exactly what you're looking for, it makes the process quite easy and to know exactly how to select. Okay. It also ensures candidates have a clear purpose, okay, and a plan goals for the position when they're joining, removing any ambiguity on where they fit within the wider business objective. So as much as it's important for us as the organization to know exactly what we're looking for, it makes it easy for the person who comes and join our organization. Sorry about that. Because the moment they step in the door, we know exactly what we need. We know exactly what we're looking for. So the moment they walk in, it is quite easy for them to know what is expected of them when they join the organization. Okay. So we look at what we call prepare the job description and a person specification. The role you are recruiting for. Try to include key responsibility in the job description to give a good idea for what the role involves, as well as giving a feel of who they'd be working with and what success looks like. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to the chat. Okay. So with one of the questions with the question that I asked is, what do we believe that a great reception is? Okay. So there are words like job description, of which I've been working in the HR space for quite some time now, and it took me a while to actually break the name down. Job description. What does it mean? It's a description of what the job will look like. Okay. So if I'm just looking at one of the things or one of the attendees have mentioned of a great receptionist, we have communication, customer service, effective communication. So if we're looking at this just like this, we've already discovered or we've already distinguished what is expected of this person. So if we're recruiting and we are recruiting a receptionist, we already need to have it in mind what those people need to have. So this person has to have great interpersonal skills and communication skills. This so the moment you write it down or you actually identify it as that this position, what are the key responsibilities? It makes it easy, even if when you have a group of people, to be able to point out that this is the person who shines out the bright because they have exactly what we're looking for. And also having idea that once we've employed this person, who are they going to be working with and the successions plan. Okay. So if this person is working great, if this person is doing exactly what you expect from them, how do you expect it to look? Okay. So we move on to person specification helps your character. It helps characterize the type of skills and mindset for the flourish. Oh, okay, for that will flourish the role. Okay, so it's not just the skills that you learned that are important. It's also know to understand person specifications. So, for instance, if we're looking at a person who works in a reception area, it wouldn't ideally be someone who's a bit of an introvert. It wouldn't be ideally someone who is, for lack of a better word, I'll use the word stuck up. It would be someone who enjoys talking to people, who communicates well. So also we just we can't just only focus on the skills that one learns, but also interpersonal skills or person specifications, of which if we look at this person and we picture him in the role, does it fit? So So those are the main key things that we need to focus on before we even start advertising. It is important that we list these things so that it is easier to identify what we're looking for. Again, it is also important to note that in any work environment, one of the biggest bill in any organization, it's salary bill. So I always say that in a workplace, we humans, we're bound to make mistakes, but I always say that in spaces where there's a lot of money at stake, I usually advise my clients to always try to avoid making mistakes. So that's why, as I said, that the salary bill is usually one of the biggest bills. So having anyone who might come into an organization without ensuring that they're the right fit or the exact what you're looking for, you run a risk of bringing somebody in, spending money on them, and it's usually a very nice, not a nice way to do it. So it is always important that we use these guidelines or these steps to ensure that we are recruiting properly or we're doing it correctly. Okay, so we're looking at choose where to advertise. So we live in a day and age where now it's not all just limited to newspaper. I remember back in the days, vacancies will be seen on newspapers, of which some still do advertise using that. But the nicest thing at the day and age in 2025, there is more places we could advertise. So we have job sites, we have internally, we have social media, and we have special support. So we'll just look into each, and so the places where we can advertise, we'll just look briefly into it, and we'll compare the benefits and the drawbacks, just so that we have a better understanding. Excuse me one second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we're looking at job sites. So the benefits of job sites is a quick way to gain a widespread visibility of your vacancy to thousands of registered job seekers. So that's the nicest thing. So we're looking for a specific person. So we're looking for this, our perfect receptionist. The nicest thing about job site is you're not just limited to where you're based. So for instance, I'm based in Durban. So if we're recruiting and I'm trying to get talent or a potential employer, I'm going to look around my area. But the nicest thing about job site is you get to reach even masses. So you can even reach people in Cape Town, Joburg, anywhere in the country, even in some instances outside the country. So that's usually the benefits of job site. If we're looking at drawbacks, you may well end up with hundreds of CVs to sit through. And it's likely you'd get a lot of random applications. Excuse me. People spam their CVs out in hope of an uptake. Okay. So understanding how scarce employment or how hard it is for people to gain employment in South Africa. So you usually, I've done recruitment for a number of organizations, and you start realizing that, especially if you use job sites, the moment someone realizes there's a vacancy, in most cases, they really do not care even if they qualify. So what the drawback with this is, you'd wind up sitting, you receive, as I said earlier on, that tonight the benefits is you get to reach a larger masses, but the drawbacks is within reaching that a large group of people, the very same time you'd find that maybe out of 100 CVs that you receive, only maybe 10 have what we're looking for. Okay, so I've seen that, and it takes time, but it's basically the drawback that comes with job sites. Okay, and then we move on to internally. So we are advertising internally. So the benefit is that the person you're looking for could be right under your nose, saving time and money and recruiting cost. So motivating employees through opportunity provision, plus they're really integrated to the culture and the rhythm of the business. Okay, so the nicest thing is, okay, we've realized that we have an opening at the reception area, of which we've realized that we had one of the employees, maybe internal, someone internally who could very much be able to rise up to the occasion. They have the necessary skills, we can train them. And the nicest thing is they're already integrated with the culture of the business. So even if they do get stuck, it is easy for them to just stand up and go, oh, someone, listen, I'm stuck here. Okay. So that's usually the nicest thing with someone who's already internally. So we don't have to kind of figure out if they are the right fit with the organization because they've been with the organization for quite some time. Okay. But now we look at the drawbacks. Okay. For some roles, bringing in a fresh perspective or new set of skills can help adapt and capitalize in your team. Okay, so as much as the work culture is all nice and great, sometimes it's not always great, because you need to understand that sometimes as an organization, we set in our ways, there's certain things that we do a certain way, of which if we were to bring in a fresh perspective, we bring someone who was not really integrated with the culture, they might bring certain perspective that might change the entire outlook, how we look at things. So it is important, if we're considering these sites or all these places we could advertise, to also keep in mind both the benefits and the drawbacks. Okay, so we're looking at social media. So benefits, so LinkedIn as the #1 social platform for recruiting and screening candidates with more than 350 million professional present. Okay, so above Facebook and Twitter, and allow specific targeting of content to the skills and expertise and required for a role. Okay, so we're still picturing we have a vacancy or reception area. So if you go to LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn has made it so easy for potential employers and potential candidates to actually meet each other. Because if you're looking at LinkedIn, it has over 350 professionals present there. So if you as a potential employer, you're looking for the reception, you know exactly, if you go to LinkedIn, you most likely would find what you're looking for. Okay. So the drawbacks is your company page needs to show good quality content. The platform is much for the candidates to review if it's the right workplace. Okay, so we're no longer living in the ancient times where it was just me as a potential employer and advertising my vacancy, and basically people who need jobs will come and apply. Now we have young professionals, not even just young professionals who are just quite they plan out what they're trying to do. They plan out their career. So even if they are seeking employment, it is important that they also look at the company's profile. Does this company align with me? That's why you'd find that most organizations now invest in in their Facebook pages, in their Instagram pages, just so that for any potential talent that's out there, that could also work as a tool to recruit them. So what you start understanding in this day and age, especially with these social media platforms, is it's not only just you who's looking. So as much as you're looking, also the candidate on the other side, they look at your organization and they ask themselves, does HR Talk seem like a perfect fit for me? Okay, so that's why in today transparent digital world, company employment brand must both be highly visible and highly attractive, because candidates now often find the employer, not the other way around. Okay, so moving right along to choose where to advertise. So we also have what we call six. If you go, so if we're still advertising. So let's say you're considering using LinkedIn. Maybe it's not best for you. You realize maybe it's not best way to advertise for your company. Maybe you tried doing it internally. It's not the best. Okay, so you can seek special support. Okay, so if you're really struggling to fit everything during the process of recruitment, you might want to consider outsourcing to recruitment agency, especially if you're serious about finding a candidate that ticks the right boxes. Okay, so we also have in place, recruitment agencies who assist. So you find that with certain organizations, they do not have the time, they do not have the resources to actually recruit for themselves. Okay, so what they would normally do is they'll just outsource the services to these recruitment agencies, and when that happens, it really doesn't take the power away. So they basically give the recruitment agencies the spec. We're looking for someone who has these skills, who has this experience, who have such and such, and then basically the recruitment agency will take over. So if you look at the benefits for this, as a good recruitment agency can take care of everything without forcing you to relinquish control of the important decision. Recruitment companies place hundreds of thousands of talented job seekers with satisfied employers. Specialist divisions ensure that you have someone who knows your sector, tailors your process to your needs. Okay, so those are the benefits because, excuse me, I just have to take a sip of my coffee there. Sorry about that. Okay, so the nicest thing about using a recruitment agency is the fact that we have different types of recruitment agencies, of which you'd find that maybe I'm going to use an example of a graphic designer. So we work in and an organization where we need things like graphics to go up or every 2 weeks or every 2 days. So you'd find that there are recruitment agencies that specifically deal with that. So you know exactly if you're looking for a graphic designer, you go to that recruitment agency and they will assist you without taking the control away from you. So you give them what you're looking for, and ideally, what these recruitment agencies will do is they'll bring probably, let's say, 4 candidates of which they believe they have exactly what you need. So you, as the potential employer now, you still have the power of selecting within these four. Maybe I want to hire Charlene out of all the four. So you still have the control. And the nicest thing is, these agencies are not something that just started recently. They've known, they have records, and they've placed a whole lot of job seekers, and and we'd find that even employees are satisfied. I do know a couple of companies that utilizes this service who would use would actually opt to use recruitment agencies, and most of them they're quite happy. Okay. If we're looking at the drawbacks, okay, so recruitment companies understand that cost associated with using recruitment consultant can be off-putting, in particular to smaller businesses. However, using specialists can both strengthen and speed up the process, giving you value time back to achieve more within the business. Okay, so we as HR Talk as well have assisted a number of organizations with the recruitment. So you'd find that the company would say, listen, we're looking into having maybe X amount of these employees. These are the skills that we require. This is the experience that we require. We do not have the time or we do not have the resources to do this. Could you assist us? Okay, so HR Talk has stepped up to the challenge. They've assisted these different organizations, but it is important that because recruitment is one of the most expensive processes, it does not come cheap. So it would be off-putting to most businesses, especially if it's a small business. We're trying to save every little cent. So to spend a large amount of money in recruiting wouldn't be the best advice for them. Okay. If I do skip certain slides, please do not think I'm just trying to rush to finish certain things. As I'm progressing, I would explain them. So you'd find that when we reach the slide, I've already covered that. Okay. So I think also another one too to look at company advertisement. Okay, so advertisement help recruiters build a solid brand identify that attracts efficient manpower. Okay, so we look at job portals. With the growing use of the internet, job portals have come to play a crucial role in connecting companies with candidates. These portals are preferred platform for job seekers looking for better career prospects, so they can make excellent source for recruiters uh, to tap to the top industry talent. So job portals in my experience, they usually work well with scarce skills. So we have what we call scarce skills, where it is quite hard to fill that position. So I've seen with most employers, they would opt to use job portals. Let's say I can't think of a scarce skill at the top of my head, but it's not your day to day. It's not your reception area. So we have a client that works with hearing with hearing aid. So I've with the client, I've seen that in most time when they recruit, they go straightforward to a certain job portal because they know that that's where they usually find their potential employees, and it's usually great when you find this platform that are up to date because it is pointless to go to a platform that has these potential employers that it's not up to date. You'd find that maybe that employee or that candidate is no longer available. Maybe they've moved direction. Maybe they're no longer in the country. So it is quite important to ensure that those are up to date. Okay. So I saw a hand. I think someone has a question for me. Shirley, okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Could you try unmuting from your side and you can ask the question, please?
Hi, Isabella. Sorry about that.
Hi.
There was just a bit of a technical challenge on my side. I tried to lower the hand and it just didn't go. Sorry about that. My apology.
Sure. Okay. So it wasn't a question, score, no problem. Okay. Thank you for that. I accidentally spread across. Okay. So we found the right place to advertise. We've decided, so with all the list of places that are available, so with each organization, obviously, we're looking at the benefits of the drawbacks. So we've decided where we're going to advertise. So now what are we doing? We've advertised, so we're receiving resumes or receiving CVs. So what we need to do now is reviewing the applications. Okay, so good candidates. Where's my eraser? There we go. Okay, so good candidates should quickly and clearly highlight how their experience align with the available role. Revisit your job description and the person specification for a reminder what you are looking for. So with this, I'm just going to go straight to the chat that we had earlier on. So when I asked the attendees, what do they think a good receptionist should have? So we have communication, customer service, effective communication, interpersonal and good communication skills, proper communications, good communication skills, attention to details, ability to work under pressure, telephone ethic, customer service. Okay. So having that in mind, and after I explain that, a job description is exactly that. So when we write it, so we had this written down. So now we're going through. So we're receiving our CVs. Right next to me, what do I need to have? I have a job description and the person specifications. So with each CV, what am I looking for? So I'm looking for someone with great communication skills. So that needs to be quite clear while I'm paging through the CV. Okay, so that's usually the easiest way to get exactly what you're looking for, because we can't always in our heads trying to make sense of it in our heads. The nicest thing is, as you're doing this, when you reach out to, okay, so do not feel bad about scan reading applications. The onus on your application to prove their suitability as quickly as possible. You will become skilled at this after reading 100 CVs. You'll be able to spot the standout candidates a mile away. Okay, so the reason I'm emphasizing the importance of the job description is within the first CVs that you'll go through, it is easy to just forget what you're looking for. So if you have a job description right here, it reminds you in each CV what you're looking for. So within the first 5 CVs, you might have to go back to the job description and the person specification often, but trust me, the moment you reach 60 to 100, you won't even need it because you know exactly what you're looking for in the CV. Okay, I've said through hundreds of CVs. I could say this, that within every time you are reviewing applications, the first few CVs are usually quite hard, but the moment you keep reading the job description, what you're looking for becomes quite clear in your head. And as you're going through a CV, you can actually quite tell. So when you look at someone's CV and then they say that they have great communication skills, okay, so in your mind, you have a tick, losing your description. Okay, they say that the experience they've worked as a reception somewhere else, you're going to tick that because that's what you're looking for. They say they've got great telephone etiquette, you tick that. So it makes it easier for you what to select and what not to select. Okay, hope this is making sense. Okay, no matter how well you crafted your job description and person specification, you will always receive wildcards, and they shouldn't be discredited. There are sometimes something about a CV which interests you for other roles you have not even considered yet. Flexibility can pay off. This is usually a good one because I've seen this in different CVs. So as much as we have a job description, which is here, which is we know exactly what we're looking for. Sometimes there's just something about a CV where you're like, you know what, I can't put my finger on it. It has, okay, it does not align with the job description that I have here, but there's just something about the CV. With my experience, I've learned that keeping those CVs, it usually pays off because you'd find that maybe in a few months' time, you might have not considered that you might have a vacancy or might need someone for a specific role. But if you keep it open in mind and you keep that CV away, you might find that you might utilize it. Okay. So we are moving to conducting interview. Okay. The key moment. Okay. The key moment giving you invaluable contact time with your candidate is the interview stage. Good preparation is key to getting the most out of the conversation. Enter knowing what talking points are most important to cover, including highlight from the CV or application, and of course requires the requirements for the role. Okay, so again, I think this also comes with experience. So working at HR Talk, we've done recruitment, I've done interviews, I've lost count of the interviews that I've done, but I cannot emphasize the importance of being prepared and taking 15 to 20 minutes with the employees, with the candidate's CV before they come in. So if there's certain parts within the CV where you need them to elaborate, you can highlight that. So for instance, we're looking for a receptionist and someone might say, I have 6 years working as a reception for this organization. Okay, that on its own is not enough. So you might want to understand that the key responsibilities that while they were working in this organization as a receptionist, what were their key, what were their responsibilities? So it is important to be prepared. So when the candidates walk in, you know exactly what to ask. Okay. We're also witnessing a rapid transformation of the interviews process through video technologies like Teams, Zoom. I think Skype is no longer relevant. Yeah. Okay. So I think after COVID-19, the world moved, shifted into a world of virtue. It didn't give us much of a choice. But as I said earlier on, that the nicest thing about using these platforms to advertising across the country is the fact that you're not only just limited if you're based in Durban, you're not just limited to candidates in Durban. You can reach people in Cape Town, Joburg, Port Elizabeth, anywhere in the country. But now, if we're moving into an interview, maybe we received an application from someone who's in PE. Do we have to drive them? Do we have to fly them from PE to Durban? No, we can utilize the internet. We can use Teams to actually do an interview. Personally, I've done interviews on Teams, on Zoom, even on WhatsApp. So it can work if you do it properly. Okay. So candidate expectations are advancing just as any consumer with higher desire for convenient mobile experience with seamless transition between digital and physical interactions with the brand. It is worth exploring new tools and technology can enhance your candidate experience throughout this process. Okay. So we're moving into now we're conducting an interview. So we've prepared. So prepare questions that help to deep dive into application's professional background to see how they're well suited to your vacancy. So as I've mentioned earlier on, we find someone who's going to list in their CV that, listen, I've been a receptionist for the past 6 years. Now, it is important to unpack that. So you can't just take that from face value. You need to unpack that. And the one way to unpack that is you ask them questions. So you ask them questions of the responsibilities. So you ask them on the day-to-day, how did your day look like? Okay. So it gives you a bit more, and with what they say, you can align it with what you need. Because initially we had to distinguish clearly what we need. So the moment we've distinguished clearly what we need, so when we have the candidate sitting in front of us and we've asked them maybe with their experience, what it becomes quite easy to align if this is the best fit or not. Okay. So avoid abstract questions for the sake of seeing how they react. Keep the conversation relevant to the role rather than testing the nerves for the sake of it. Remember that an interview are a two-way thing. Your candidates will be looking to see whether your business is the right fit for their career. So remember to be courteous and sell the benefits of the position and the organization. As I mentioned earlier, that we're no longer in the day and age where employers seem like they have the upper hand, they're the one offering the job. Kind of they are just walking in looking for the job. We're in the day and age where candidates are they're quite choosy, especially when someone knows that, listen, I have the relevant skills, I have the relevant experience, I'm basically an asset to any potential employer. So this is a two-way street. So it is also important if exactly you're saying that this person has the skills that we require, you need to use anything that's at your disposal to try and attract them. So you'd find that, I'm just going to make an example. Some employers would speak of something like Provident Fund. So if your organization offers Provident Fund, So during the interview, it is important that you highlight that so that even if when the candidate goes home and they're thinking of X amount of money you offered them a month, they saw that, oh, okay, cool, there's also profit and fund. Oh, there's an option of working from home. So you can utilize all that to attract the talent that you want. Okay. So what's important? Do not ask hypothetical questions. Find something practical you value as part of the job. Avoid how would you do this or that. You'll always get a model answer. A good example. So I have my potential candidate, my receptionist interview sitting next to me, and I ask him, if a client were to call you and they're upset about something, what would you do? 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times, the answer would be the person who's getting interviewed would kind of give me an answer that I would want to hear. What's important is you need to ask, give me an example. So if they've claimed that they have 6 years work in the reception area, so you'll be like, give me an example when you were dealing with an angry customer and how did you deal with it and what was the outcome? In that instance, they can't model an answer and create it because this is not a hypothetical situation. They need to think deep and remember of a situation where they were dealing with a difficult client and how did they resolve that. So it is important that we ask the right questions just to engage to get as much as we can from the potential candidate. I hope I'm not going too fast. I hope all is still. In fact, if everybody's okay, can I just see by thumbs up, please? It is a lot of attendees. It is a lot of information. So sometimes, okay. Okay, appreciate that. Okay. So if we're conducting interviews, use of psychometrics. Okay, this is a very crucial step um, of the selection process because information revealed from assessment will help you know your potential employees will perform and stay productive. So if you're looking at psychometrics, they are different and of some are industry specific, but we have one that we usually utilize in HR talk. It's called discus. So what happens is just to give everybody an example. It's a list of questions of which with these questions you have to choose one option, something that you would most likely do, and something that you would least most likely do. So there's not really no wrong answer. And after a candidate has answered those questions, we process through the discus assessment, and it kind of gives us an idea. This person, how they deal with stress. I can't really explain it to detail, but the report that comes back, it kind of gives you an idea of where the candidate would be more suitable in. Okay, so most organizations have reached out to HR Talk for assistance with this. Perhaps it might be a tool that might work for your organization as well. So if you might be interested, you're more than welcome to reach out after this training. I'm more than happy to explain it because I can't really go in actual depth details, but basically it's the simplest way to kind of see if the person is a perfect fit for that role. Okay. There we can go past this. Okay, now we're moving to reference checking pre-employment checks. Okay, so we're assuming that we've done the interview, we've asked the relevant question to our potential candidates, we did the psychometric test. Now we're sitting back, we're like, you know what, we're quite happy with the application, we're quite happy with the interview, we're quite happy with the result that we got back from the psychometric test. Now we need to do reference checking or pre-employment checks. I cannot emphasize the importance of this. Okay, so once you have shortlisted your top candidates, it's time to check the references. Consider references from agencies or the candidates, but also conduct your own references and more than one company. Consider looking at a public profile and endorsements like LinkedIn. Okay, so working in the I'm sure this is not going to be new news to anyone, but when it comes to references, it is known that some people, so for instance, I'm going to work at HR Talk for 4 years, and after working for 4 years, maybe I'm going to do something terrible and then I'm going to get dismissed. When I'm going to get dismissed and then I'm applying for a new job, I'm going to list HR Talk as a place that I've worked in, but I'm not going to include the company's number because if I include their actual number and the potential employer calls them, most likely my former employer will tell what happened. So you'd find that what applicants would do, they would change the number. So they'll include the organization number and only just put maybe their friend's number and give them a heads up. Like, listen, if someone calls you and wants to do, just care. So at HR Talk, we do reference checks for anyone who's going to be coming in and for some clients. One tool that we've learned and we use is when doing reference checks, it is important that you do not use the number that's listed on the CV. So if someone claims that maybe they worked at Debonair's in Gateway, what I would do is I would go to Google the number for Debonair's in Durban, get that number, call in, and try to look for someone who might know this person. Okay. And it is important that you do then more than one reference. Okay. So if someone is listed 4, at least do 3. Gives you an idea of the type of person that you're dealing with, because 9 out of 10 times as the employee is walking in or the candidate is walking in, they're most likely going to omit certain things. Okay. Many employers miss this recruitment step, but it's essential to check. Most employers do miss the step because you'd find that they look at the application, they look at the interview, they look at all the results, and they just make, because there's absolutely no reason to think that maybe this person is hiding anything. They'll be like, listen, good to go. They shake their hand and be like, listen, you're hired. It is important to ensure that these checks are done. Not just reference checks, we have all other pre-employment checks, which is called criminal checks, credit checks, industry specific, such as qualification of sexual offenses registered as child protection register. So if we look at criminal checks, so sometimes it's also important to somewhat, not all checks are relevant to each industry. So for instance, criminal checks, most employers would want to know whoever they are employing. Do they have a history of any criminal activities? Okay, it's important to check that. With credit checks, also, I think it's important for instance, if you think about it, if let's say we have a vacancy of a finance person, okay, if you are going to be handling the organization's money, I think it's important for your credit to check out. I'm not saying that you can't employ a finance person pure finances who handles their finances poorly, but if I had 2 candidates who have similar experience, similar qualifications, but one has a great credit score over the other one, I would opt for the one with a better credit score or who handles their credit a bit better. Because if you're going to be handling the organization's money, I think I sleep better at night knowing that you can also handle your finances. And then we look at industry specification like sexual offense registers and child protection register. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight on this. So we on the news, I'm sure people have seen, there is a case that happened, I think in PE, where a young child, a 7-year-old, was molested. Till to date, there hasn't been much progress with that case. So if we look at industry specifications, what are we looking at? We're looking at any person who's working with minors, any person who's working with people who are mentally challenged. So there is a register that is done. So it's not mandated, but it is great. It is good practice. So for any of our clients that work with kids, we always encourage them to do these checks every 2 years, because I don't think it's enough you're employing me. I'm coming into a workplace. I'm going to be working with kids or people who are mentally challenged, and you do these checks once, and then I'm set for life. A lot can happen in those spaces. So that's why I usually advise that at least it should be done 2 years, because kids are vulnerable, people who are mentally challenged are vulnerable. So checks are very much important. Okay. Contract. So a well-crafted contract cannot be overemphasized. Careful consider which items or conditions are relevant. So here, that means that we knew what we want. We chose where to advertise. We advertised. We got applications. We reviewed applications. We did interviews. We did checks, and we're comfortable, because all of this, at no point is there a step of which we can be like, we can pass the step. All these steps need to flow like this to ensure that this is done correctly. Okay, so now we're moving into a contract. So a contract of employment might differ from organization to organization, but these are the things that you need to be, that basically need to be the contract of employment. Okay, so now we're looking at job offers. Can we withdraw them? You may be convinced that we have found the perfect candidate. However, you may discover something concerning. You decide you need to withdraw the job offer. Can you do this? Whether an employer can retract a job offer ultimately depends whether they made an application conditional or unconditional job offer. Okay, so let's just look at these two. Unconditional job offer, an employer can withdraw an offer at any time until it is accepted. This means that once the application is accepted, an unconditional job offer, there is a legally binding contract of employment between the employer and the applicant. If you decide not to hire the individual, they can take legal action against you for breach of contract. So that's an unconditional job offer. So if I sit down, okay, I'm sitting down with Charlene, we do an interview, I'm like, listen, I am happy with what you've said, and then I decide to give her an unconditional job offer. And she accepts. The moment she accepts, we have a contract. So I can't go back. Okay. And I'll give an example just to make everyone understand. So a conditional job offer can be withdrawn if the application does not fulfill all the conditions of the offer. The conditions could include satisfactory references, criminal check, record check, a qualification check, or health check. Okay. So in instances where you'd find that potentially employers would offer employment on the is you'd find that in certain instances, maybe the potential employer has been struggling to fill this vacancy. Maybe they've been doing interviews, but maybe at a certain point they find someone of which they believe they like. You'd find that potential employer jumps the gun, shake the candidate's hands and be like, listen, you are employed. I always say it is always, no matter how much you're trying to fill the vacancy, it is important to ensure that all the checks are done. So you need to check the references, check criminal records, check everything before you offer employment. Because if you're going to offer employment and then the candidate accepts, and then you go and checks, and then you find out maybe this person claimed that they have these qualifications, they do not have them, you can't retract the job offer. And then you realize perhaps maybe they have a criminal record, and maybe they're not healthy enough. So you can't withdraw. So that's why I always emphasize that it does not matter how much it is important to fill that vacancy. However, it is important that the offer is made when all checks have come back. Okay. So this is an onboarding orientation. So you need to plan for the new employee's arrival. So we're happy with all the checks. Everything came out right. We've offered okay, let's go back to be ensured that we offered the employee the right. Okay, we offered the employee a conditional offer of which all the checks checked out. We're happy, and then onboarding. So we need to plan for their arrival, toilet, lunch, smoking areas, all of that. I think the easiest way with this is just merging them with a buddy, but we do have another training of onboarding, but this is basically just a summary. Okay, recruitment gone wrong can already start before employees have started. Okay, Employment Equity Act details unfair discrimination include prospective employees. Okay, let's just go to, sorry about that. Okay. So now we realize that we possibly might have made a bad hire. The first thing to do is to evaluate and document the employee's performance, identify trends, and assess whether the issue is due to an error in your hiring process or if it's the employee. Okay, so rushing to fill the position, hiring based on a resume opposed to skills listing inadequate talent, requisition skills, and failing to check job references. If one of these internal hiring errors was made, you first need to revise your hiring process. So that's why with every time I reach a new step, I always start from the start, because with all the steps that we've mentioned here, there is no one step of which I believe that this one is not really mandatory. We can do without it. Each and every process in this whole thing, it is important that we do it. So if you realize that, okay, we have someone that really in the workplace, we filled the position, but somehow we just feel like we did not make the right choice. The first thing is going back to the recruitment process. You need to check where all the steps followed. Okay. Did the company make the mistake, or is it maybe just the employee? Okay. Discuss the problem with the employee as soon as possible. Okay. So there's no need to wait for it maybe for 3 months. You need to discuss it. Okay. If the issue is stemmed directly from the employee's discussion your concerns with them and allow them to correct their mistake. It is important to address performance and attitude issues as soon as possible. You can resolve them before they get out of control. Okay, so performance, implement management with more frequent performance reviews, performance improvements plans. Okay, so now we are not happy, so we need to put a performance management in place. Okay, so we need to check if, let's say we had a discussion with this employee and we're like, listen, we're not quite happy with your performance. However, if you need assistance, we're willing to assist you. And then from that moment, you start monitoring, okay, is there any improvement? At the very same time, you can't have a conversation with the new employee today and expect change at the end of the week. Okay, we need to give them sufficient time to basically rectify. But at the very same time, we can't give them 6 months. Okay, adjust employees' responsibilities as need if able to. If the employee is putting in a lot of effort but still can't reach their KPIs, they may not be the right candidate for the specific role. If they're a great employee, otherwise consider moving them to another role that their talents are better suited for. Okay, so in some instances, you do find that everything was done correctly and the employee is trying their level best to meet what is expected of them, but however, they're just failing. So in that instance, you do understand that it's not the employer's fault. It's just that they just do not have the skills. So if the company is able, you might move that employee because in that instance, you realize that the problem is not the attitude. Okay, but attitude and work ethic are two things you cannot teach an employee. So in this instance where you realize that the employee is trying their level best, but they're failing, you could explore an idea perhaps maybe moving to a certain department. But if someone has a bad attitude or work ethic, there's not much you can do. Okay. If an employee fails to deliver a strong work ethic and a good attitude each day, it's time to part ways. Remember, your business is not personal and you cannot keep it going if you let the wrong people at your place of business all day. Okay. So if you realize that no, it's just bad attitude. This employee has bad attitude. Maybe they're constantly late, not necessarily because they can't help it. Well, it's just attitude. So you can't fix attitude. So it would be the best way to go your separate ways. Okay. So now we're looking, so we've decided that maybe we're moving this person to a different role or we're getting rid of them. So we're looking for a replacement. If the new hire isn't working out, review other potential qualified candidates. Okay, remember we had 4 and then we employed 1. So if this only one is not working out, the first thing we do, we go back to check the other 3. Perhaps we might find our person then. However, don't contact anyone for interviews until you've made an official decision to terminate the employee. But it can be beneficial to have other potential candidates in mind. Okay, so we realize that we've tried everything, it's not working out. If the decision is terminating the employee that we have, and obviously maybe within the other candidates that we have shortlisted, we have a perfect person, we need to ensure that we need to, if you're deciding to terminate, you need to terminate that before, so you can't reach out to the other candidate while this person is still working. You need to be quite sure with your decision. If you terminate this one, then you can reach out to one of the candidates that you had. Terminate the employee. If you've conducted analysis, discussed the issue with the employee, and are still seeing poor results, it may be best to terminate their employment. When terminating an employee, be kind, honest, and direct. Make sure you comply with the applicable labor legislation. Here again, value carefully crafted probation clause cannot be overemphasized. Okay, I think time does not allow us, but in these instances, probational period clause will work because obviously when you employ an employee and they come into the workplace within the first, it differs from role to role. I'm just going to use 3 months. Within the first 3 months, what usually you're trying to do, firstly, you're trying to see if all the things that the employee or the candidate said they could do, firstly, they can do it. And are they a good fit? So do they work well with others? So it's usually important to distinguish this because you can't let a bad hire go on for 9 months and be like, listen, this is a bad hire, because the question is, how did you let it go on for this long? Okay. And then lastly, the cost of a bad hire. Okay, I'm just going to quickly read through this. When it comes to hiring the right talent, there is no easy way or shortcut, especially when the cost of rushed poor recruitment is so high. The Harvard Business Review states that 80% of employees turnover is due to bad hiring decisions. It is definitely evident that the cost of bad decision runs high. There are many impacts of employees turnover, one being time and financial cost of recruitment. High cost are one of the most discussed negative high of turnover. Every time an employee leaves and is replaced, there is a cost associated with this process of losing the first employee and hiring the training new employee. Another impact is the opportunity cost of work not being done, delayed project, reduced business activity, and customer being neglected, decreased efficiency and productivity. In SA specifically, litigation and or CCMA dispute. Okay, so that's another thing because now if we are going to employ badly, because again, we need to understand that once we've realized that we made a bad hire and we terminating this one employee, it does not mean that they will go without a fight. I've seen employees who were let go during their probationary period go to CCMA to lodge a claim of unfair dismissal. Okay, so if you skipped one of these processes and then you make a bad hire and then you try to fix it and then you terminate the employee, you still run a risk of going to CCMA, of which this person, when they get to CCMA, they might ask for compensation. So it is quite important that each step is followed precisely. Just to highlight before we adjourn is it is important to know what you want. Write a job description down. It makes it easy for you to know what you're looking for. It makes it easy for the person to come who's coming in to understand what is expected of them. Okay, understand what the best site to use to advertise. Once you advertise, have job description and person specification next to you, of which when you're reviewing applications to ensure that you're referencing these so that you can get what you want. And once you've shortlisted, you're moving into interviews. Ask important questions. Don't ask hypothetical questions. Okay. From that, we can move to psychometric test. And from that, we do the checks. We've already emphasized the importance of checks. And then from that, we can move on to onboarding, contracts and onboarding. So this is it's like a chain. So you move from this to this to ensure that the recruitment is done correctly. Okay. We have reached the end of our training. I'm just going to give a chance to any person who might have any questions for me. You might raise your hand. Actually, no help unmute. If you may be uncomfortable with speaking, you can pop your question on the chat, and yeah, I'll be more than willing to assist. Okay, I have one hand. Okay, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sabelo. With regards to the last two slides, we're talking about termination. Now,
Yes.
For example, in terms of the labor law, one can extend, say, we have a 6 months probationary period. Now, one can extend it for another 3 months because in the event that one is still not sure 100% of whether they should transition the person into a permanency role, and you have a frank conversation with the employee and it's highlighted to the employee there are certain shortfalls. The employer has given the necessary training support, yet this is like a last chance for the employee to try and
Yes.
pull up his or
Do
her
better.
socks.
Yes.
So at the end of that time, it's still the person still didn't rise to the occasion with regard to the
Yes.
KPIs, deliverables, etc. And also the management of the whole team becoming demotivated. So one would terminate the contract because in terms of the clause of the contract, one can terminate them, isn't it?
So
You still need to have a DE, a chairman
so
to
so what's important with probation? So because at the very same time, I am going to be honest. I've seen sometimes employers trying to exploit the probationary clause. So for instance, they would say a probation is 3 months, and then you'd work your 3 months, and they'd be like, I feel like you're not the great fit. I'll give you another 3 months, and then at 6 months, and then after 9 months, they're like, listen, you're not a good fit. It's not working out, and then off you go. Okay. So in this instance,
Mhm.
firstly, we need to consider the role itself. Okay. Because if we've had someone for 6 months and somehow they're not meeting their KPIs, it is within it is appreciated from the employer side that you did not just opt for dismissal. You've tried to give them a chance. I've seen that
Mm.
happening. So if the employee, so the nicest thing about this thing, that's why it was highlighted as important that the moment you have problems, instantly start speaking with the candidate. Okay. So we do not have, let's say the probation is 6 months. We don't have to wait for full 6 months to actually say that this is not working out. So let's say within the first 2 months, we realize that this is not working out. We have a conversation with the employee, and then we tell them what's expected of them. We offer the assistance that we can, and then we sit back and wait. Okay. So if you're going to wait up until 9 months, if we get to CCMA, because I always try to look at it from a commissioner's perspective, if we get to CCMA after 9 months, if the commissioner asked, this person was in your work environment for 9 months, and you did not realize that they were not a good fit. Okay. So it is important that as much as you can extend, they're not meeting their KPIs in what way. So if they flat outline they're not meeting it, you should not keep them longer than you should. If you feel like perhaps maybe it's not the attitude problem, they're trying their level best. It is also important that you identify that before we reach a point where maybe it's 9 months or a year later, because in that instance, and that means that because it needs to be quite simple. We look at the job description, this person is failing to meet that. We have a conversation with them, we give them time to fix it, we give them, let's say, a month, and it does not happen. We have a second conversation. I would avoid reaching 9 months. Just considering it from a CMA perspective, you can do it, it's within your right, but just to avoid any back and forth with the commission CCMA, because if you've had someone for 9 months in the workplace,
I hear you,
saying,
Sabelo, but
yeah,
if I can just interject here, I hear what you're saying, and 100% that is correct. The interpretation and as also as to how the employee should be conducting the conversation. Now, the conversation has been conducted from the word go with the line manager, etc. So now, because of the person asking for another chance, and because of being, I suppose, from a compassionate aspect, also give me
yes,
another
yes,
chance. I will prove myself. I've got a
yes,
commitment, aged parents, etc. So based on that,
yes,
but the conversation is still clear. Look, if you're not going to pull up your socks, etc., etc., it will come to a termination. But an
yes,
employee is doing his level best for whatever, but the person still at the end, from a leadership skill, one of the team members are being, there's just mismanagement with the whole team, etc. It's just not. And now you're looking within the organization for a possible fit. This person doesn't fit for any other job role. So
yes.
then it is termination.
Combination,
You
100%,
with
100%.
me?
So obviously, yes, yes, yeah, 100%. So I agree with you. So listen, I was only saying that I would avoid 9 months just in case to not read CCMA. But the actual truth is, firstly, you're not, if the person is trying and they're failing,
Mm,
and you can't fit them anywhere else, because when on that slide it said that if it's not bad attitude, we can try fitting that maybe employee in a different department. But if you do
mm,
not have that option, you don't. If you're going to sit down with the employee, have a conversation, and they're literally going up, putting on their neck on the table and saying, listen, give me a last chance, I'm going to sort this out. If by the end of that time that we put in place, it's not happening, you're well within your right to terminate it. And I'm not saying that we should not do the right thing because we're scared of CCMA. If you have the grounds, because you have the grounds, this person is not delivering, you can
mm,
terminate it. And of which we get to CCMA, you'd obviously have all that on record, of which on this date we had a conversation with the employee. This is what we discussed, this is what we agreed on. The last chance was given to this employee on this date. This was agreed on,
mm.
and they did not improve. So as the employer, I was left with no choice. So you're well within your right to exercise that as the potential as the employer.
Okay, so in that way, then that is correct, because it's just basically a notice of termination. Then that
100%. So
yeah.
it wouldn't really, if they're still under probation, it won't have to go through a disciplinary inquiry, because they're still within probationary period. So it's more or less
Sorry,
we
I didn't hear
tried.
that. Did you say it must go to a disciplinary
No, 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 no,
inquiry
no, no,
or
no.
not?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It
Oh,
does not need to go through a disciplinary inquiry because we're still under the probation. So it's basically have a conversation with the employee. Listen, we tried it. You remember our discussions? It's not working out. So you would terminate the employee, but you will not have to do a disciplinary inquiry.
okay. That the disciplinary inquiry is normally for the permanent staff that is poor performance, and then you need to have a DE with a
Very
chairperson in
much.
there. Okay.
Yes, that's
No.
correct. Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions on the chat? Um, yeah, I think I saw one. It's unconditional job offer. Do they serve as a binding, legal, only in writing? Um, okay, so to answer the question is I would say no. I would say no, because okay, I know we're out of time, but I'm just gonna make a quick example. This actually happened. So someone who used to work here in Durban for, I'm just gonna say the SABC, worked for SABC for this period of time and then moved to Joburg. Moved to Joburg, worked somewhere else. Years later, there was a post that came out at SABC, and they applied. They applied. They did all the interview. Great. And the person was offered the job, of which he needed a month to serve to his employer and then move the kids to Durban or whatever. So during this 1 month notice, what happened was the employer, for some reason, decided to go through the employer, the candidate or the new employee's Twitter. So they went through, and then many years ago, they realized that this person, while working at SABC, had written something horrible about SABC. SABC this, that. Now, I remember the case because while we were going through it, the offer, it wasn't really specified whether it was written or it was verbally. But the employer decided to retract the employment. And the person took SABC to CCMA and he won the case. So I think the best way to answer that question is, I think as a potential employer, you need to try your level best to avoid making an unconditional job offers. That's usually the best advice. That I don't think there's an instance where making an unconditional job offer would be helpful, because it is important that once we've discussed everything, I need to do the checks. Okay. So whether it's verbally or in writing, once the person has accepted the job offer, it's basically binding. Okay. I hope that answer makes sense. Okay. Before I adjourn, maybe with the short thumbs, if we're all okay, everything is good, we're all understood, and then I'm going to be sharing the slides. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, guys, thank you very much for each and every one of you also availing yourself for our training today. I honestly hope it was helpful. I hope that my example was easy to understand and follow. Thank you very much for just being of the training. Charlene will be sharing the slides with each and every one of you. And thank you very much. Have yourself a wonderful day going forward.